9 months ago, my husband and I welcomed our first baby, and for our baby's homecoming, his aunt gifted us a huge, chunky knitted blanket. This blanket was incredibly soft, and I couldn't stop commenting to my husband about how I'd love to find a full-sized version of it for myself. I even joked about being a little jealous of the baby's blanket. A few weeks ago, my husband snuck off to the store, but he wouldn't tell me where he was going or why. I found it a bit suspicious but brushed it off. That same evening, he unexpectedly asked for an hour of alone time every night after our son went to sleep. He told me he didn't get enough me time and requested not to be disturbed. I reluctantly agreed, and although I wanted to know what he was doing, I respected his privacy. A few nights later, during his alone time, our son started crying. I checked the baby monitor and saw that he'd lost his pacifier, and as he settled back to sleep, I noticed something in the corner of the room. My husband sitting on the floor, a pile of chunky yarn in front of him. I turned up the volume and heard a YouTube video playing about how to finger knit. That's when it hit me, he had been sneaking off to buy yarn and using his alone time to knit me a blanket, just like the one I had mentioned wanting. My heart melted. Here he was, this giant man, 6 feet 4 inches with hands the size of basketballs, carefully knitting with tiny needles, so gentle with the yarn. I couldn't contain my smile, but I decided to play it cool and didn't mention anything. I could tell he'd struggled to keep it a secret for long, though. A few days passed, and sure enough, he came to me multiple times, all but bursting to tell me. But I kept encouraging him not to spoil the surprise. Eventually, after dinner one evening, he couldn't hold it in any longer. He took me to the drawer where he had been hiding the blanket and pulled it out. "I've been learning to knit to make a blanket for you," he confessed. Even though I already knew, it was the sweetest thing I had ever seen. I was so touched I almost started crying. The blanket was still only about a quarter finished, but it was perfect. The yarn was so soft, and in my favorite color, no less. I could see how much care he had put into it. The loops were consistent, and it was shaping up beautifully. He told me he had been moving it around to different hiding spots, but since our house is small, it was only a matter of time before I found it. He also mentioned he'd run out of yarn and asked if I'd like to pick a new color to add to it. I was thrilled, and we made a little date out of it, lunch and a walk through the craft store, where I chose a complementary color to add. It may have started as a secret, but it ended up being one of the most thoughtful, loving surprises I've ever received.